Hello, everybody. Can we take our seats, please? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Fort Langley Community Association's Town Hall meeting on our favorite friends, mosquitoes. And I'm sure we've all had pleasant experiences with them. So I'm Andy Schuldhorn. I'm the chair of the Fort Langley Community Association, and I'm really pleased to see everybody here tonight on this pressing issue that we've experienced, well, I've experienced since I've moved here in '92. It seems that every few years it becomes a devastating effect. And last year was one of our worst years ever. It affected our residents. We couldn't go outside. We couldn't. Our kids couldn't go outside. Businesses were severely affected. And I as a personal point, I'm part of the Fort Langley Jazz Festival, and it was devastating to have CKNW come out the week before and basically say, don't come to Fort Langley. And so it's something that we need to deal with. It's not just personal comfort, but it's an economic disadvantage to have the mosquitoes, and the word is out there, and I even see it in the real estate industry too, that I've had people come up and say, no, I don't want to move to Fort Langley. So tonight we're here to discuss this issue with the help of our guests, Dirk Lewis and Shaun Calver from Morrow BioScience, and they're going to provide us with the technical expertise on managing mosquito control programs. We have reached out to Metro Vancouver and to the township, and unfortunately they were not able to attend tonight, but it is our intention to follow up with them to find out more on the mosquito programs in the township and how we can better abate the issue. Tonight's format will be a presentation, and then from there, I've got a few questions to ask that the mosquito committee has put together, and then we have a microphone here, and if you have a question, feel free to come up and we'll finish the evening that way. The only other thing in closing is that we do have a email list in the back there if you want to be part of the Fort Langley Community Association newsletter, and we try and put that out as often as possible, and so I encourage you to sign up on that. So with no further ado, I will pass the mic over to Dirk, and he will start his presentation. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dirk Lewis. My counterpart, Shaun Calver, is up at the top. I'm going to be moving the slides forward. We've been doing mosquito control for a while. I've been doing it since 1990, Shaun since 2003. So we've been doing this a bit. I'm going to run through a slideshow, hopefully answering a lot of questions about mosquito biology, about what we do, about the weather factors that affect us, and then some sort of expectation management in terms of what can be done, what can't be done, and then personal protection, and then open it up for questions. I've tried to answer some of the questions that Andy sent me within the slide, and I'll point those out. If they're not full, or if there's further questions, we can ask, and then, yeah, I'll give it my go. Only two other times I've ever talked to a group this big, and one was a eulogy and one was a toast, so hopefully this goes better than one and about the same as the other. Go ahead, Shaun. So this is it. We're just going to talk about mosquito biology. There's a lot of misconceptions about the mosquitoes that we manage. They're not the same as all mosquitoes. And so a lot of the questions that come up sort of relate to mosquitoes that we don't manage. The ones that you do manage, you know very well. They're the worst. And we'll talk specifically about their biology. Yes?
Could you move a little bit closer to the microphone?
Oh, I can, yep. Is that better? We're good? Okay. Hopefully I won't drift. If I do, just... and then a preview of this year. Some of the questions that have come up have been around climate change and how it's affecting the mosquito control operations. It's a lot, but that's the Coles Notes version. Expectations and personal management. There's other questions about methods that can be used to control mosquitoes that we can't use here. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers. And Shaun, go for it. So generally, mosquitoes in the whole all need water for their first phase of life. So the eggs are laid either on soil or in the, did this just change or did I change? Oh, okay, thank you. They need water. The larval development happens almost exclusively in water into pupae, and then they emerge as adults. And we're all familiar with the adults. From our control perspective, our main focus is the larvae. The life history of mosquitoes varies. There's something like, I think it's 2,700-ish mosquitoes in the world, different species. They bite all kinds of different things. In most places in the world, there's a lot of disease and challenges with mosquitoes. We're fortunate here in that they're just really, really annoying. And then different life histories in terms of how the mosquito bridges winter. So we'll talk a little bit about that, mostly with respect to the kind that we're interested in. So good mosquitoes, bad mosquitoes, you're all very familiar with the bad ones. They're a very specific life history. The larvae themselves typically need 4 to 14 days. It's temperature dependent. That's how long they're in the water for. So if you go out and you see them in your bird bath wiggling around, if the bird bath is quite warm, they're going to be pupae within 2-3 days and then mosquitoes coming out. If it's really cold, they could last 2 weeks at there. The pupae are the final aquatic stage from the control perspective. We'd never like to see the pupae because at that point, there's nothing we can do about them in the water. They don't eat anymore. They need to eat for the pesticide that we use. And then from there, they emerge. It's kind of cool videos if you ever want to pass the time at midnight. YouTube videos of them emerging. Mosquitoes are pretty creepy, the way they kind of come out of the pupa, but interesting. And then adults, sort of some adult mosquitoes overwinter as adults. We always get phone calls about those mosquitoes early in the year. They're the ones that are hanging out in attic spaces or in holes in trees. They overwinter, often as blood-fed females. They'll come out, lay eggs, and then start that whole cycle. They're the really big, dopey ones that you see at the beginning of the year. And lots of times, particularly after a year like last year where the mosquitoes were bad, we get more calls in the beginning because everybody's thinking that that's Armageddon is coming again. And then the lifespan really depends on heat and humidity. So down here, it's perfect. The forest is quite humid. It doesn't get super hot. The heat dome would kill a lot of mosquitoes, but we don't get that really interior dry that accelerates the larva or the adult mosquito death. They last quite a while down here. I think, and this one sort of touched on questions 1 and 2. There might be more questions about that later. Okay, Shaun. So this one here, so this is what we're looking for. This is 1 cup, like a 350 milliliter cup. You'll see our staff out there with the white cup on the end of a stick. And this is what we'll see. When the mosquitoes come in into the floodwater here, these mosquitoes are called floodwater mosquitoes. They're quite specific to the habitat on river bottoms and pretty much all of Winnipeg. These mosquitoes will come out at like 80 million per hectare. I think that might be on the next slide. I might have given something away, but they'll be upwards to 1,000 per 350 milliliters of water. And if you sort of reflect on how much water there is on Bray Island or through Derby Reach, that water, often when we go in there, it's just black in the grasses, just full of larvae. So there's a lot. These mosquitoes are extremely effective. They'll come in at the beginning of the year, when the freshet comes through, it starts to flood the land, and so we're getting little pockets of mosquito larvae as the water's coming up right now. And those eggs have been sitting there probably this year, just a year, because it would have sort of cleared the deck last year because the water came quite high. But those eggs can be sitting on the soil. You can have a dozen years of mosquitoes. If you have a really high year, lots of mosquitoes, they'll lay eggs. Every year you're going to get more mosquitoes, and if the water doesn't come up and hatch all of those eggs, you could have layers of mosquitoes. So often it can be really, really intense. They do require a freeze cycle, so these are what's called a univoltine, so a one generation per season mosquito. Some mosquitoes that are involved with eventually if West Nile virus shows up or other sort of mosquito-borne diseases, they have to have many generations of mosquito per season to get sort of old enough mosquitoes that will transmit those diseases. These ones, we usually get just one generation of these mosquitoes. So they'll come out, the floodwaters will come up, they'll hatch all the eggs that are in the soils, in kind of the reed canary grass and up into the blackberries and the cottonwood. And then those mosquitoes will come out, they'll hang out, the males and females will mate, and then the females go off looking for a blood meal. And those are the ones that are bugging us. Once they find a blood meal, they wait until the freshet has started to recede, and then they'll lay their eggs on that soil, and then they're done. So those mosquitoes, sort of one and done, they become part of the food chain. They die off after 1 to 2 months, and then those eggs sit. And those eggs need to go through a freeze cycle. So if the water comes back up again, the freshly laid eggs won't hatch a second time. Like you won't get a next batch. They need to go through a freeze cycle, and then when the water in subsequent years comes up, then they'll hatch, and then they'll be prolific again. And then these ones, yeah, and I've seen fields in the Nickaman area where they burn the fields in an attempt to kill the eggs before the field floods, and the larvae have been more intense there than anywhere else. These are super hardy little eggs, quite amazing. And then these mosquitoes, unlike most mosquitoes, a lot of the ones that we have coming out of bird baths containers around our houses, they'll be bad on the southwest corner of your house, but not on the northeast corner of their house. They don't go very far, whereas these mosquitoes will go easy 10 kilometers looking for a blood meal. They're very excellent flyers for a mosquito and also very, very determined. All right, next. So yeah, they come out at 80 million per hectare. So it's, we've done the math in terms of how many mosquitoes that is per person, and it's too bad a number to tell. There's a lot of mosquitoes. These, looking through reports, we've seen the reports from the 1800s where Eric Hurl was commissioned to look at agriculture and Sumas Lake and by the Queen for mosquito control, and there's images of fence posts that are just fuzzy and thinking that they're bad photos, but you look at them closer and everything is covered with layer mosquitoes. So back in the time, these things, they'd completely overwhelm a system. They're very aggressive. These ones, as you are all aware, they will bite pretty much any time of day. Unless it's really windy, nothing deters these ones. These are very aggressive mosquitoes. Hence their Latin name is vexans, because they're aggressive. And their key in sort of evolution is just to completely overwhelm a system. So one of the questions we get is, well, can't I just put up bird boxes and bat houses? And if bird boxes and bat houses would work to control these mosquitoes, we wouldn't have these kinds of mosquitoes. So there would already be a control mechanism in place. The only places we work is where these mosquitoes are prolific and overwhelm a system. So, yeah, that's the beast that we're working with. All right, next, Shaun. So pretty much what we do is we have every site that we know, or every floodwater area, we have it mapped. So we know where the water goes. Generally, the challenge for us is that each year, based on when the water comes through, how high it comes through, where the groundwater is at, and how much precipitation has come down, varies where we get that water sitting on the surface to get the conditions that are just right for the hatching. So you can see on the far right there, the green are samples, usually early season, where there's water, but there's no mosquitoes, and then it gets intense. So you can tell that the highest intensity in Langley is in this area in terms of habitat and its productivity. So there's an awful lot of mosquitoes produced down here. It's excellent mosquito habitat. So we map the sites. We've got a lot of sites in our database. We monitor those. So each year we're already out now, monitoring for mosquitoes. And then as the water's coming up, we start to treat. So crews right now are treating pockets along the edges where the water's come high enough to produce mosquitoes. Eventually, or not even eventually, probably within the next week or two, the water's going to come up to the place where we'll have the helicopters come out. And we use the helicopters when it's just too much. We can't, it's too deep, it's not safe for us to go in, and the vastness of the affected area, we just couldn't do it with people. So the helicopter comes out, it's like our monster hammer. And then we continue to do that as the water's up. Seepage sites are popping up all the time as the longer the high water stays, the more pressure there is, and you get seepage water further away from sort of the main river channel. So it's sort of constantly hunting for that. And then we'll answer phone calls. So we get lots of phone calls. It's correlated very well. The high water years, we get a lot of mosquito calls. Low water years, we don't, and that's just the correlation. So it's a really good indicator for us of the larva or the mosquito intensity. And then a question that comes up regularly and we were asked was killing the adult mosquitoes. There's nothing effective that kills the adult mosquitoes without killing everything else in the environment. And when I first started doing this in 1990, that was my job, going around at night with a backpack and a full respirator and spraying individual backyards, and we did that all summer with no cessation in the mosquitoes. It'll kill them, but then they just sort of fly back in, and unless you can do what they do in the States where they're using, B6s and just doing entire swaths of area, it's just not effective. And then from an environmental perspective, all these things have to go through the pest management planning and the stakeholder process. And we found in the last few years, if there's even a mention of adulticiding, that's a killer on any pest management plan. So it's done in the water. So we'd go back and then use the sort of larviciding as kind of our only option. And from the perspective of doing the control work, that's what I used to do, and it's not that effective from the biology perspective. From the perspective that people see after the mosquitoes are out that you're on the ground doing something, it has that effect, but not an actual killing mosquitoes effect. All right, Shaun, please. So this is the larviciding. The granules, most of you are familiar with this. There's also a liquid product that we use a little bit that's the same active ingredient. This is just in corn. It's a bacteria that's in the corn. Corn is just a carrier. This is the bacteria itself is actually certified for use in organic farming. The product is not, because corn, as most of you know, you pretty much can't get non-GMO corn, so they can't get that certification. So one company is working on an organic product, but generally it's not. We target with the big red arrow the larva. Larva is where we're headed. We're monitoring so that we time it just right. Timing is everything for us. The set of 3 pictures there, this is actually this is the back channel, correct, on Bray? Yeah, this is the back channel on Bray. So we canoe in and access that, and it's a lot easier from the stem of water to access all the floodwater sites. We put it out with you can see the crew out there with the backpack blower on. It's just a duster, and it blows the granules, and we'll treat all the areas as the water's coming up to kill those mosquitoes, to kind of hold them off until the water's high enough that we can do the whole thing with the helicopter. So our game plan is to get as much as we can on the way up, and then when the helicopter comes out, just try to get everything. And that's the helicopter up at the top. We use Western Aerial, and yeah, we've been using them a long time. Next one, please. Oh, that did answer, I think. Oh, can you go back, Shaun, please? We have that? Yeah. So one of the questions that comes up is, does this product affect other aquatic organisms? So the 2 ways to look at that. One is the direct effect, like does this product biologically kill or other organisms in there? And it doesn't. At the label rates, this is very specific to mosquitoes. Mosquitoes have an alkaline gut system, and the toxin that comes from the protein that comes from this bacteria affects little channels in the mosquito gut. So it actually means they can't control their liquid balance in their body. And you'll see it's kind of creepy. Actually, a lot of times you'll see them broken in half. They just kind of pop in the middle. But it doesn't affect most other insects. They don't have that basic gut. Certainly fish, mammals, birds, nothing has a basic gut. So this doesn't affect anything else. The other way to look at it is the trophic effect. So these mosquitoes, they will provide some food, not so much for birds and bats. Birds and bats would rather eat things like beetles and black flies and little meteor, like little flying Big Macs, and these would be like the flying celery. So those, in areas where there's a lot of agriculture control and a lot of mosquitoes left to kind of fill that void, bird populations will actually lose weight because they're spending so much energy eating mosquitoes. The other kind of mosquito that we don't control are the ones that are coming out of ephemeral ponds. They don't come out in the same numbers, and they provide sort of a season-long course of mosquitoes, mostly for insects. So dragonflies will eat mosquitoes. Dragonfly larvae are voracious predators, and it keeps that part of the population, and then those bigger bugs are the ones that the birds will eat. So it's more of a trophic effect. That said, as you're well aware, some years there's a lot of food out there, and then some years there's really not very much. Like 3 years ago, the mosquito population was really low. So there's nothing in the biota that really depends on this because it's so periodic. Go ahead, Shaun. This one is sort of a rough slide, but there's limits to how far we can go. And often we get the question, well, can you treat in those grassy areas right next to it because it's fish bearing? So the way that they consider high water is the change in vegetations. Once we get the water up into these grassy areas, that's now freshet and floodwater. So these are all places that we are able to treat. We're not restricted by the regulations to treat in there, and we're not even really restricted on a private property perspective. During floodwater, all floodwater that is sort of, and they say it's contiguous or periodically contiguous by surface connection to the main stem, is considered public land at that point. So as long as we can access it, we can treat it. We don't have that issue here. There's some areas where we have landowners that just don't want us on their land, so we don't. But really anything from that reed canary grass up the bank is fair game for us. And that's where the mosquitoes love to go. So it's a lucky coincidence. Shaun? So a little bit about what happened last year. Most of you are here because last year was quite a year for mosquitoes. You're not alone. It was bad right the way through to Golden. So last year was a really weird year. In all the years that I've been doing mosquito control, I've never seen snow melt that happened like that. So we're really dependent on how the snow comes out of the system, especially down here with such a big system. The Fraser River goes through 2 to 3, sometimes 4 meters of elevation, which is a huge amount when you think about the angles, huge amount of flooding. And the higher the freshet goes, the more area there is. So we're super dependent on how much snow is in the snow basins and then how fast that comes out. And so what we saw last year, we can go to the next one. I'm already jabbering on too much, but here's what we saw. So the slide on the left, it's a little bit confusing, but the pink is kind of the 25 to 75 percentile average. So most of the years, the snow that's in the system fits within that pink curve. That's historical. Lately, since climate change has kind of started to accelerate the differences in how the water comes out, it's all over the map. So last year, so the way this chart works, yeah, so the green line is 2 years ago, the blue line is last year. So you can see as the snow, the blue line, it was quite high, but we were coming into the year feeling a little bit of confidence because it wasn't as high as it has ever been. I've seen 2011, 12, 7, 2. There's been a lot of years where the snowpack has been considerably higher. The challenge that we had last year was not only did the snow not start to come out, and I meant to buy a laser pointer, but you could see the blue line just really pushed the graph to the right. That snow stayed out there, and then when it came out, it all came out. And the big challenge that we had, and you can see the far right graph, that red line, the one that dips down farther than any else, that was where we were sitting in, I think, late May. The snow, I can't remember exactly where that was, but it pushed it way back. And if you remember back to the biology slide, one of the things that affects larval development is heat. So when we waited, well, we didn't, but when we were forced to wait that long for the snow to come out, all of that water came into warm environments, and those mosquitoes went fast. So it really shortens the windows. Sometimes when the water's really warm, you'll have 96 hours to treat the mosquitoes because they're either eggs and it's too early, or they're pupae and they're just not eaten anymore. So that really aggravated the situation, coupled with we had a lot of rain in May and June, so the water stayed on the surface. So it was the perfect storm for us last year. And then the longer the water stays above, in our case, sort of 5 meters at the mission gauge, the more pressure you have for seepage sites. And the seepage sites are the ones that come up. They're the sneaky ones that we don't know about until you stumble upon them. They could be pockets under cottonwood trees in the forest, and they're extremely difficult to find. So 2011 was a year like that, where the water just stayed really, really high and really aggravated the mosquito situation. So it was similar to that last year. So that's sort of the climate conditions that contributed to this chaos. That's everything. Next slide, please, Shaun. So this you can see, and this one I think tries to answer question 5, but I can't for the life of me remember what question 5 was now. But this was the chart on the left shows our ground treatments. So that's when there's a lot of larvae, that's when our ground treatments are the most. So we're out at the beginning of this sort of curve for the mosquitoes. Once it got up high and stays there, we're not really getting a lot until we start to get the seepage, which are all the smaller treatments that kind of continue on. So you can see here the mosquito productivity, the larvae, where we are most busy is at that start of the curve. As it's coming up, as it gets into the top, if we get some years, we'll get successive peaks that are quite a lot higher, which will be more habitat and hence more mosquitoes. And then on the far right there, this is where all the complaint calls come in. So they come in towards the end. So all the work that we're doing is at the beginning of this bubble, and those mosquitoes, the ones that we don't get, are going to sit in the forest, they're going to do a little bit of mating, they're going to do a little bit of feeding, some pollinating, and then as that starts to recede, they're going to come out and start looking for blood. And that's when we start to get the phone calls. And then the next slide, well, we can talk about, actually, sorry, Shaun, you can go back. Of the calls we got, like 70% of our calls last year were from the Fort Langley area. So this was an intense number of calls. And then also the Kanaka Creek has a lot of mosquito challenges as well. And then, 185 hectares is what we treated in Langley, I believe, last year. I think I did that as Langley. So it's quite a bit of habitat, mostly Bray onto the Kwantlen, and then a little bit along Derby, and then Crescent Island. A lot of treatments there with the helicopter. Right, Shaun? This is what we saw. So 88% of the mosquitoes are considered a floodwater mosquito variety. Most of them are Aedes vexans. When we get the high water like this, we get Aedes sticticus. They're essentially just sort of the vexans are in the first regular common layer of floodwater, and then as we get higher into the cottonwoods, we tend to get more sticticus, and it's just a habit preference. They're both very annoying mosquitoes. If you look closely, one has black legs, the other one has stripy legs, but other than that, they're both bothersome. And then 14% of them were crunched up Aedes. We can make a good assumption that those ones were vexans or sticticus, because that's what's in the traps. And then those ones, if you think back to the other chart that showed the phone calls coming in, the phone calls come in at the same time pretty much as we're starting to get mosquitoes in our traps. So we know those mosquitoes are there, we know they're coming, we know what they are. We do the trapping. It's interesting sometimes because I get to look at all the bugs to find something that's unique. There are some very attractive mosquitoes out there, but also kind of a timing. Sometimes if we're setting up the traps and there's a lot of male mosquitoes in the traps, we know that we've straight out missed a site because the males don't fly very far. They emerge, they come up, they wait to mate, and then they've got a couple days left where they go and eat pollen and then they're done. And it's the females that carry on all the great work that they do. And then, there's quite a few mosquitoes in this area, and it does get fun. Aedes canadensis is one of the ones up there, the fourth one down. Those are the ones that if you have, and I've been a mosquito guy most of my life now, and my wife was disappointed in my skills because we couldn't sit in the back corner of our property because we were bothered by mosquitoes. And I could not for the life of me for years find them until I found them in a discarded fireplace in my neighbor's yard in the corner. And those mosquitoes were going 30 meters. That was it. You couldn't sit in the hammock at the back, but you could go up front. So they're very, very specific. Anyways, I found it and we're still happily married. Next, please, Shaun. So a preview of this year. I always hesitate to say this because I said the same thing last year. It's pretty good news. Last year, we didn't think the snow was going to be that bad, and then it waited and waited and waited and just kicked us in the teeth. This year, the snow was less. We didn't think it was going to be that bad, and then it waited and waited, and now it's just dumping out of the system. So it's coming up quickly. There you go. Thank you, Shaun. You can see there. So you can see what happened last year. This is a different snow basin, but the last year is now the green line. So that's what happened. It stayed up, and then it just dumped out that real heat that we had. This year, similarly, but it came out a little bit sooner, and this last heat wave we've had has been extraordinary. In fact, typically, I think, I can't remember if I put it in here. The snow bulletin just came out today, so the May 1st snow bulletin to talk about what's going to happen the rest of the season. And even that, they're like, we're pretty sure, we think maybe it might come out slowly later. So they don't really know. Usually by May 1st, we've lost 4% of our snow. Sort of mid-May, 100% of our snow is there, and then we start to lose it. This year, by May 1st, we'd lost 9 or 9.5% of our snow out of the Fraser Basin. And then a further, a further 26% has come out in the first 8 days of May. So the snow, here it is. So not a further 20, so 26%. So the snow has, rather than doing what it has done most of my time doing mosquito control, it's just all of a sudden plummeting out. Like this heat comes in, it's intense right up to middle elevation, some of the high elevation snow, and it's just exiting the system. And so this is what we've seen. The Fraser River went from 3 meters sort of Friday to it's gone past 4. It'll hit about 4.5 in the next day or two. Maybe by the end of the week, it'll start to come. We just saw at South Fort George, it's coming down, which is about 4 days for us. So this river just jumped in a way that we don't normally see it. So it's one of the questions we had was climate change, and we're still kind of scrambling to figure out, we can't predict it anymore. It used to be 20 years ago when I was doing this, you'd have a bad mosquito year and then a good mosquito year, and then a bad one and then a good one. And now it's all over the place. We've had lowest water years on record, highest water years on record, and lots of our other programs, earliest freshets, and now we're getting these really, really rapid melts. So it's a lot of head scratching, trying to figure out how to react quickly to it. I think that's it for this one, Shaun. So there's the Fraser River. So you can see the Fraser River's tidal when it's low, especially up towards Mission. And then as it starts to accelerate up, more pressure is coming from above, so there's less tidal fluctuations, but you can see how it was kind of humming along at the 2 meter mark, and then it just skyrocketed, and it's still going up. So our crews are out right now, a lot of hand treatments as it's coming up. We don't tend to get the helicopter out until it's kind of 5 meters. That's when it's enough water to justify it. We can manage most of it by ground crews. But we don't know, again, how the rest of the snow. So we've lost a lot of our low and middle elevation snow. Still, most of our high elevation snow is up there. So if we get another heat wave coming through that's going to go higher, then it's going to dump that snow out as well. But my hope is that we've lost a lot of that middle low elevation snow, and it's not going to pile on underneath that high elevation snow. So we shouldn't, unless we get some extraordinary rains, That said, if you look at the Clever modeling, it's called, on the provincial website, they're predicting, I think, 5.5 meters in the next week or two, which is high water and a lot of mosquitoes and a lot of treating. So never really know, but I like to be optimistic. Some of the changes that we've made, we've got more crews on the ground, particularly in Kanaka Creek and in Township, in the channels. We've got a regular crew at least once a week. Is it once or twice? Twice a week. Twice a week in the canoes in the back to access. They're super handy for us to get into that back channel, particularly on Bray or McMillan, I can't remember what we call it, but into the back there, and then access from both sides. And then there's some floodwater over on the Kwantland side. And then one of the challenges that we've had, and we've already experienced it in other programs that we have, is that because the seasons are so truncated and sort of distinct now, we get the snowmelt coming through, so we're using the helicopters for the mosquito control, and then if we get any floodwater activity after that, we've got no helicopters because they're all off fighting fires. And so we've put together a ground team this year that's dedicated to come around and do more larval treatments. So we're hopeful that that's going to be effective. We're already getting to test it because this year the forest fires didn't wait until the flood season was over, so we have no helicopter for our sort of middle BC programs. It's already gone fighting fires, so we're going to be all ground crews. So I'm trying to adjust that way so that we can be quicker. It's easier to mobilize a team of really keen individuals than it is to get a helicopter all racked up and out, and so we're working that way. Shaun, next one. Here you can see this one just shows sort of an undeniable truth that we know to be true, obviously, is high water equals high mosquitoes. So no matter how hard we work, no matter how far we go, higher water is just going to be more mosquitoes. We get 80 to 90% of the mosquitoes, but that 10 to 20% of mosquitoes from 80 million is still a lot of mosquitoes. And so you can see here the challenges that we have in terms of the number of phone calls we get fluctuate very closely. That correlates well with the river level. So it's high river level, lots of mosquitoes, lots of calls. Low river level, fewer mosquitoes, fewer calls. So it correlates very well. So it's a good, unfortunate indicator for us. Shaun? Main obstacles, so one of the questions that we had was, like what other efforts or how much more effort could you throw at this to do a better job? And it's kind of that law of diminishing returns. We could fly the helicopter every day. The main challenge that we have, one of the main challenges that we have with treating the mosquitoes in the water is particularly in the lower mainland where you've got layers of blackberries, and then you've got alders, and then you've got cottonwood. It takes a lot to get the pesticide to the water, and once the pesticide hits the water, it doesn't move. So it's meant to be buoyant, sort of neutrally buoyant, to spread vertically through the water column, but it doesn't spread on the surface or through the column of water. So you'll go in and well, not you, we'll go in and we'll treat a site, and there'll be downed cottonwood trees with grasses over it. You'll treat the whole site, and then you'll come back to monitor to see how effective the treatment was. And that strip of water that was underneath the oh, it's a dog. That strip of water that was under the grass will be loaded with mosquitoes because the pesticide has just sort of bounced off. It hasn't gotten in there. So when we're flying with a helicopter, it's impossible to see or to get all those things, and a lot of the mosquitoes that are left over, that's where they're coming from. So physical obstacles is a really big deal for us. We've had some folks suggest that we burn the grasslands before the start of the season to try to clear that up, but not a practical solution. It leads to some other problems. So the tall cottonwood areas, like there's a site on Stave Lake that's wide open. It's 95 hectares. It's a massive site. We do that with the helicopter, and there's no mosquitoes left in that, but there's no physical obstacles for the pesticide. So there's a big difference in the sites. And then Unlimited cash. I think the Winnipeg mosquito control program is a good example. They went well in excess of a $5 million budget and didn't improve their mosquito control program. There's just, there's a place where and this is what I learned in high school, that effort doesn't, more effort doesn't mean a better grade. So it's, it's one of those things. So it's our job, Shaun and I as sort of the control people, to gauge what can be done, and the timing is the big thing, like when we can time this. And we hit it as hard as we can, and then there's that limited window of opportunity. If anything that we haven't gotten in that first, 5-6 days of that really steep freshet is out of our reach. Next slide, Shaun, please. And then so, what can I do? And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. Most people here know this, but really the key thing is to find a place to get away from the mosquitoes. So if you can get into a screened window, I spent a lot of time in Fairfield Island, which is a hopping place for mosquitoes, and we would just bolt from the car to the screened-in tent and try to make the best of it out there. The mosquitoes like anywhere that they can sit away from the wind, so tall grasses, hedges. If you can set up your barbecue area away from those areas and in the wind, they don't fly very well in the wind. Screens really, really work. I can't remember what year it was, 2002 maybe, 2003. 2003 was a really good year from our perspective for mosquitoes. There weren't very many, and a fellow that owned a screen making company in Chilliwack threatened to sue us because he wasn't getting enough business. So screens are really important. And then keep them out of the house. I mean, the most annoying thing, one of the most annoying things, and I say one, I have an 8 and a 10-year-old now, so I know it's just one of the most annoying things, is that mosquito that's still in the bedroom while you're trying to sleep. So the big thing is to keep it out of the house. Next. And then personal protection. Mosquitoes are really attracted to scents. So lots of the nice laundry soaps, hand sanitizer is a great one for attracting mosquitoes. Anything that smells vaguely flowery will attract mosquitoes, or smelly feet. Mosquitoes like sort of whatever it is. I'm not sure what it is in that. Sometimes they'll use socks to attract mosquitoes to traps. So the scents really attract the mosquitoes. Often somebody in the crowd is the one that's always attracted by mosquitoes or to mosquitoes or attracts mosquitoes. And usually that's the person that wears the floral scents. The mosquitoes love that. They can bite through clothing. So the yoga pants, that kind of thing, not a great idea because they can hang on to it, bite. It doesn't shift on your skin, so they'll go right through that, no problem. So loose-fitting clothes, if you move and it's shuffling, that little proboscis can't handle that shear force. So they don't like the loose-fitting. Light colors are definitely better. One, light colors, you're going to be cooler. So from the temperature perspective, you won't be as attractive to the mosquitoes. They like the heat. And then they like dark flowers. So the mosquitoes are really attracted to the deep blues, the deep purples. So stay away from those colors. Lighter is better. Repellent, so the caveat that we always say with repellent, read the label, but it should have a PCP number, which is a Pest Control Products Act. So anything in Canada that has been tested to be safe and effective. So it's different than products you can get in the States, which only have to be safe. They don't have to be effective. Up here, things have to be tested safe and effective to get that. If it doesn't have that, just apply some skepticism to it. Lots of sort of essential oils don't actually do anything to repel mosquitoes. They'll make your skin kind of oily, so for a while they're not going to like it, but eventually they'll like it. The repellents, if you're going to wear them, DEET is still the best one, but it does affect, I can't wear DEET. I've worn so much that I don't like it. It doesn't work for me, but it keeps the mosquitoes away. There's some off botanicals, seems to work quite well, but all of them will have a PCP number on the label somewhere. And that's a federal pest control products, so it's safe according to the label and effective. And then when all else fails, my wife hates bugs. And we live in the Kootenays, and there's black flies. And she's, whenever we go on our nice romantic evening walks, she's got the big bug net on. And, you know, everybody thinks that I'm a total failure then, but they do work well. You know, if you're going to be out in the garden, nobody likes to waste a good garden. So Lee Valley's got some really nice, semi-attractive bug shirts and hats, and they do work quite well. Terry in the back, we did a big trip down the Fraser, and I think many of us had bug hats and jackets on that one. That's it on that one. Next. So that's it for me. So if there are any further questions, I know, Andrew, you said you have some.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions here. So when you talked about budgeting and the laws of diminishing returns, but are you finding, and it's a difficult question to bring up about budgets,
Yeah.
Not to throw you under the bus or anything, but are you feeling that your budgets are adequate? Are you fulfilling the full budget every year? Is it something that municipalities or Metro Vancouver needs to look at?
We've not been told by Metro Vancouver to stop because of budgeting. So we've not run into that in terms of running to the edge of the budget, although things keep going up. Like helicopter costs went up 20% this year, pesticides went up 20%, so it's, maybe we're going to get there. A good question for Metro Van and the township, but we have not been told to stop
Okay.
because of budgeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. The other part is, you've talked about, I think, public lands mostly.
Yeah.
And for people that have acreages along the river here and have a lot of water on their properties, how do you approach them to spray on their land? And do you keep an inventory of homeowners that you could contact every year?
We do. We're required to keep like a no spray list and for ourselves a spray list. So the township within the Metro Vancouver program, the township of Langley is the only one that does cover control efforts on private land. So we do most of the, particularly Derby Reach area. We know most of those landowners down there, and we'll communicate with them. We know the ponds. Those ponds on those, so those really nice cattail ponds are not productive from the scourge mosquitoes that we see perspective, but we do monitor them regularly in case, if a habitat gets out of kilter, then you'll get an awful lot of mosquitoes coming out of it. So we do.
One there. Okay, so you have an inventory of homeowners, and if somebody wanted to contact you as a property owner, acreage, do they just reach out to you?
Yep.
Would that be the best thing?
Shaun, you want to go one more?
Oh, there's.
That's me. If you want to get me, that's me.
So that's 604-317-1413.
We
And we're FaceTime Live too, so.
Yeah, well, there is a toll-free number that goes through that. So the way we set it up, because we're a contractor, so our contract is based on whether or not Metro Vancouver wants us to keep working for them. So to set up, Metro Vancouver has, and I think I'll send it out to you, Andy. There is a toll-free number that Metro Vancouver has that goes through to our toll-free line, and Shaun gets those messages and we respond to them. This one here, I'm not always super reachable, but if it's dire, then you can call me for sure.
Okay, so what data is BioScience currently obtaining as part of a long-term monitoring potential program for enhancements? What are you looking at to better your productivity?
Yeah, one of the things that we do differently is that we sample and we record every larval dip that we get. So we try to get a really good understanding, and this came out of a program in the central Kootenay where the floodwater mapping that we had didn't reflect what we saw on the ground. So our efforts with the green and the orange and the red colored larval samples is all of those, there's water. So we have, as we build this, quite a massive amount of data that shows date and where water is. So our goal at some point is to get more predictive. When we can see where the water's at, we'll have a really good idea exactly where we should be. One of the challenges we talked earlier was the kind of what the groundwater's doing, the rain's doing. That changes all the time, but we feel like there should be some patterns in that. So we monitor the mosquitoes in terms of age and densities, and then the location of those samples quite accurately. And then we layer that on the climate. So we layer that on the temperature, the precipitation, and then what's happening with the Fraser River as measured at the Mission gauge. So it's a good indicator for us. We do have, once in a while, we'll have a really keen summer student that wants to collect water temperature and pH, and that's not very often. So we've looked at that, but there's a lot in the literature about the chemistry of the water that will trigger the larvae to hatch. And our experience down here is that if there's water here, there's going to be larvae in it. So we haven't spent too much on that.
Okay, this other question here is in regard to the projected climate change. And, will we or could we see new and expanding vectors for diseases such as mosquito-borne Zika, dengue, or West Nile? Is that something that you look at, or have you seen that come about?
We've talked about it. We used to talk about it a lot more before COVID, and that kind of took over the conversation. Certainly, we're seeing some different mosquitoes move further north. Most of the viruses, West Nile virus is a good example that we have the right mosquitoes, we have the right habitat. There's no reason we shouldn't have, or we should have, I guess, West Nile here, but the length of our sort of the total heat that's embedded in our spring-summer days is not enough to really support West Nile. But as our season starts to expand, we're getting this heat earlier in the season, and then our fall is lasting longer, and our heat domes are coming in. We're getting a lot more cumulative heat in the season. So as that progresses, that we should start to see those. So we monitor for most of our contracts, particularly Metro Vancouver, the species composition of mosquitoes that are out there. So we know where the mosquitoes are, we know what kind there are, and we know if they're competent vectors. And then others, some of the health authorities, BC CDC, probably doing more of it again now, but they monitor for the disease. And so when we'll collaborate with them, and actually the Invasive Species Council of BC just reached out to me today to talk about mosquitoes and invasives and how we plan for that. So it is something that's going to happen. How fast?
It's on the horizon.
Yeah.
Okay. One final question here, and where are we compared to other lower mainland hotspots, and where are we in the scheme of things, and what are the other hotspots?
Other hotspots, certainly pretty much nothing west of us, east of us for sure. So Fairfield Island, Island 22, kind of that south side of Mission can be just nasty. They got Matsqui Island is right there. Hope up at the golf course, there's many spots. I don't know what we would, maybe top 10? Top 10. Yeah. The tough part about, I think, Fort Langley is the bad mosquitoes, but in terms of the population, this is one of the more intense population mosquito interfaces. So Fairfield Island, there's fewer people out there, and a lot of them have been there a long time, and Shaun and I have had this experience going out to talk to landowners or a farmer about the mosquitoes on his property, and we're just covered in mosquitoes. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? So there's differences as you go up the valley, but it's a happening spot down here for sure. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a few questions from our Facebook Live.
Okay.
So are you treating the Salmon River and Salmon River habitats too?
No.
No?
Like the salmon, that one goes
It's on the west side of Fort Langley.
through Langley City, right? That one?
It got up to Trinity Western.
Okay. We do monitor in there. So whatever reason it's not as productive. Do we treat anything along there, Shaun?
But a lot of times, the last couple of years monitoring, an effort just to ensure that we weren't missing something, and nothing of significance was found. We continued to log that.
So did everybody hear that? We've monitored it, and yeah, it's not as the Fraser and the water coming through the Fraser, and then up the sort of Nickham and Norrish on the north side, some up the pit, but not these smaller ones, no.
So it's basically along the Fraser River with the snow melt rising the tide, and we're, okay.
Yeah.
And then another question, I think you covered this, but how can we kill, trap them once they're in our yard?
That's hard to do.
Yeah.
You know, there are products that you could buy. Mosquito magnets is one. I'm sure everybody's seen the ones that have the propane, and they're supposed to like mimic a buffalo and breathing out carbon dioxide. They'll collect mosquitoes. The one thing that we found is that they don't collect the Aedes vexans. So 47% of the mosquitoes were Aedes vexans, and they don't like those traps. The Aedes sticticus love them. So you know you get rid of some of the mosquitoes, but often, mosquitoes have spent their entire evolution getting really good at finding live things. And so if you have one of those traps in your yard, the mosquitoes will think, ooh, carbon dioxide, and they'll follow it, and they'll go, ooh, actual carbon dioxide, and then they'll go to the people or the animals or whatever's close. So often, unless they're set up properly, they're just kind of making the system worse. So other than that, the buzzy traps, they'll kill mostly bigger things that are satisfying, because you think things are dying, but there are things that are probably going to eat the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes are not that interested. So.
I use the Thermacell,
I've never tried those.
and I found it very effective, yeah.
That one's a pesticide, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it works.
There you go, Thermacell. Well, I've
Not
tried
trying
that.
to, I don't have shares there or anything like that, so. And you mentioned that these mosquitoes, then, that they travel about 30 kilometers?
10 to
10 kilometers?
15, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that's from where they hatch. That was another question. And then I have a question here from, so what can be done to mitigate mosquitoes issues at large outdoor events?
Again, that's a tough one. You know, we used to go out and do adult sighting for the event, but that's with organophosphates, broad-spectrum pesticides, kill everything.
Yeah.
Not ideal. So it's not something that we're really allowed to do. Our advice is, you know, plan an event outside the mosquito window.
Okay. We can open it to the floor. Does anybody have a question they'd like to just come on up here to the microphone? And
I was here, hi, I was here in 2011. We had a massive invasion of
Yep.
mosquitoes right up the valley. I happened to be working in Mission, Maple Ridge, Langley, and Port Coquitlam. It was wild.
Yeah.
They sprayed, and in 2 weeks, we had none.
Often, so which year was that? 2000?
I think you said 2011 was the last invasion. That's why I'm picking that, because I thought it was around 10 years ago.
But that might be coincidence. The last adult sighting that was done in the valley was in 2003. So I'm not sure what was sprayed, but yeah, it wouldn't have been for mosquitoes. I know they've done some BTK for gypsy moth, but that would not affect mosquitoes. I'm not sure what would. Yeah. Yes, Frank.
Yeah, Frank Cox. Shaun was kind enough to come and meet with some of us down by the slough there and Bray Island to show us a little bit of dipping technique and things
Yep.
like that. But I'm starting to appreciate the problem of Bray Island with the forest cover. And I'm familiar with the main slough,
Yep.
but also familiar with a number of side sloughs. I was down there today. I have my boat on the other side of the island.
Yeah.
And it's already encroaching well into the grasses and up into the habitat for mosquitoes. The problem that I see is with the helicopter is actually getting to some of those forested and heavily covered areas.
Yeah.
It'd be very interesting for us to see some of the mapping that's been done in terms of where the key spots are there, because I know of about 5 different minor sloughs in flooded areas on Bray Island. I walk to Tavistock Point pretty much every day.
Yeah.
Have my boat on the other side of the island. There's other spots that might be easier to treat, like up West Creek and Nile Creek and so on. They're a bit more open.
Yeah.
But there are also private properties in there, and I know of one that's flooded right now. But what would be interesting is I'm curious as to how well we are covering by hand some of those minor flooded areas. And
Yeah, I mean, we should be, certainly it'd be worth,
well, I'd love to
Easiest-
walk the area with somebody
Yeah.
sometime and just make sure. We talked to Shaun about, would there be some value in volunteers checking these areas on some sort of regular basis to augment what you might be doing, or, to sound the alarm if that were necessary. But I suspect that there are some of those areas that aren't getting treated.
it's possible. We could certainly, doing a walk with one of the crew on our handhelds, it'll have all the larval sampling that we've done sort of historically. And we do use that as a template, so to speak, as we go out. So if we are missing something, it's always good to find those little areas. You are correct, like the helicopters, our biggest tool, but also the biggest challenge, getting it through. And so when we're putting the larvicide out by hand, we put it out at 4 kilograms per hectare, which doesn't sound like very much, but it's enough to kill the mosquitoes. When we do it with the helicopter, it's between 10 and 14 kilograms per hectare, so that, our goal is that we get 4 kilograms to the ground or to the water. And so it definitely presents a challenge. The
'Cause
crews,
I know some of those areas on Bray that you can't reach by canoe.
yeah,
So I would certainly welcome an opportunity to, I know several people that are very familiar with that landscape, and
Yeah.
see if we're missing some spots, because those mosquitoes last year were coming from somewhere, and they weren't being treated with the up and down of the water.
yeah.
I moved here in 2007, and that was as bad, if not worse.
I remember 2007,
yeah.
yes.
And so we've had their ups and downs, but I suspect that there's areas there that we're not getting.
There could, and in years, I don't know whether it was 2-3 years ago now, we found a very large area that we hadn't been treating them on the Kwantlen side, a big area back there. So there's a lot of habitat. So any advice or any local knowledge is important. We're hesitant sometimes. I know we've given some dippers, I think, to the canoe club, Shaun said. Yep.
Yeah,
And-
that's us
Yeah.
as well, yeah.
It's, and we've had mixed success. Hopefully it will be good, but sometimes that kind of goes by the wayside, so it doesn't change how we're out monitoring. But
Yeah.
if it could augment, then for sure. it'd be
Well,
nice.
if we can, the point I'm making, and we would welcome the opportunity to make sure we're not missing areas, not that we're in a position to effectively treat them,
Yeah.
but if the crews could say, oh yeah, we didn't know that little area was there.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah.
just,
Let's make that connection.
okay,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Thank you very much for tonight. It's very informative, especially the biology of the situation and sort of the criticality of the instability of the situation where you have to gauge what's going to happen. So I have 2 questions. One's actually sort of a thought. So I wasn't really aware you used helicopters, and I'm looking at the photo there and
Yeah.
the payload. I did wonder whether or not anybody had considered using drones.
Yes, that's speaking to my heart. I am,
Okay, because I think that there could be a huge role for the use of drones, especially with these smaller areas or coverage, especially now, as you're saying, there's pretty much a crisis with the overlapping of the fire season and when you're going to be needing the helicopters.
We are, and probably an inordinate amount of my time this season so far has been working through the licensing and the permitting process. We are not there yet because the province doesn't know how to certify anybody applying with a drone. So in theory, they'll have that sorted out, but we're working through the Transport Canada, and then the drone technology is it's frightening how fast it is improving. So, yeah, it will be an effective tool. Probably we figure 15, maybe 20% of the helicopter time would be replaced with drones and more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be a good option. My second question is a bit more proactive and kind of high level, but it's having to do with the fact that I understand the integrated pest management legislation is really very restrictive for a variety of reasons. But I do know that there's a lot of research that goes on, and I know your company does do a lot of research. So I'm thinking about the gap between what the larvicides can do and, you know, the unpredictability of the seasonal aspect and floodwaters, and whether or not, I mean, I'm very limited in my knowledge, but it does seem that there are places that are researching things like, I'll just say chrysanthemums, for example. So, and I know that it may affect other things, but it seems to me that an organization like yours has the expertise and obviously the history to work with the province to try and expand those opportunities. Because I came from Ontario where we had chafer beetles, for example, and everybody used to service those with a pesticide until the research and development came up so people could actually go to the store, the Home Depot, and get their own stuff and do their own yard. So I'm hoping that, you know, this would be the direction that you would be considering.
That would be fun for sure. From a like we participated in a trial for an aquatic herbicide this year, and the resources that go into the development and the testing is way beyond
Phenomenal.
way beyond my grade level and pay level and skill level. So yeah, I know there are. And we go to conferences in the States, and the number of pesticides that are available in the States for mosquito control, adult and larval mosquito control, is outrageous. There's so many. And even just for those companies that have developed all these products, the market in Canada is just not big enough for them to spend the money to register it. So it's, you know, there are products that are available that can fill some of the gaps, but we can't use them in Canada just because it's prohibitively expensive. So there are working groups that are looking at how we can share registration kind of knowledge with the EPA so that we can sort of balance it out, but it's not there yet.
Well, I'm always optimistic that with climate change we can get funding maybe from the federal government, because there's a lot of things that are going to be challenged. And I know when you're talking about sumac, I'll just wrap it up now, but you know, there used to be a sense that people would live there seasonally because they knew that they couldn't stay there year-round, the indigenous people.
Yeah.
But now that we have all this infrastructure here, that's not an option anymore.
No.
No.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Tough. You're welcome.
In terms of manpower,
Yeah.
how many crews would you have working in this area?
We got 8. Well, I turned 50. I can't see anymore.
Okay. And how many people would be on a crew?
Well, it's 8 people. So we'll have a person that's monitoring here. We have one person that's sort of dedicated to Langley, a bit into Surrey, and then we have a sort of a canoe crew that does further, particularly in the Bray Island, twice a week.
And I know your one slide showed that it isn't necessarily the more money you spend, the more results you get.
Yeah.
You got 8 people. Wouldn't it be better if you had 80 people?
Well, I'm not sure I'd want to manage 80 people.
Well,
but,
that's immaterial, but
yeah. No, I think that'd be diminishing returns sort of
I don't think there's
equation.
enough effort being made, actually.
Yeah, understandable. Trying to find that balance. Certainly, if we had unlimited people, then we could do unlimited sampling. That'd be a taxpayer question, I suppose.
Hi there. I've learned a lot about mosquitoes tonight. I might have some nightmares now, but
Sorry.
so besides just the little card that the township's handing out, and I'm asking as a councillor in the township, what is the relationship and what does the township actually do to support the work that you're doing? And could we do more?
No, I think, the township's proactive. We work with Lavina, and she does a lot of work with helping with Metro Vancouver and their public relations department help with some of the materials. We do, each year we'll do at least one public event, like we'll have a booth and a table at a fair. I think May Days.
Okay.
So
So
we'll be out and-
awareness campaigns, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
And what about
awareness.
mapping? Do they help with mapping and?
No, they'll help, if we need sort of property owner information.
Okay.
But we share what we do with them, and then anything that we need back. Sometimes it's like, hey, this property is closed up, can we get access? And they'll, because of privacy, they'll connect with that landowner and see if we can do that. But that doesn't happen too often here. No, the township is, from the public relations, they have some information on their website. I think they bounce some of our social media posts, and so, yeah,
Okay, well, thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Hey, question, if your treatment is safe and doesn't affect other species, and what's people's reason when you go to like a residence that you know has water spots on their property, what's their reason for saying no?
Sometimes it's choice, and then there's a lot of stuff on the internet, so.
Really?
Yeah, and there's distrust. There's distrust of government or the bodies that register pesticides, and, we can talk at length to anybody, and if they don't want to believe us, they don't. And so we have a number of areas where it's, I don't trust the pesticide, I don't trust the registering body, so, and, yeah, we don't force that issue.
Right.
So that's the big one. And then there's some people that just, no, I don't want you messing with the environment, so not a lot we can do. But most of those times, like areas, if it's a small pond on somebody's property, it's not producing the mosquitoes that are really bugging us. They'll affect them sort of more locally,
Gotcha.
yeah.
I just wanted to say, just being here for like 7 years and then coming from Walnut Grove, it was like a failure last year. I think that's why so many people came out tonight. When
Yeah.
we could have been so many other places on a nice night without mosquitoes in our town.
Yes,
And you did say 96 hours you have to act sometimes, correct? And you also said that you don't even have a helicopter in your arsenal sometimes.
that's true. Down here, we do tend to have a
You
helicopter.
have one person who manages here in Langley, that we said?
Well, we have one person that's regularly monitoring, and then we have
When
crews.
you have that 96-hour window, you don't have a helicopter or on the ground with these backpack blowers trying to cover acres and acres at a time. How many people do you have?
Oh, it would be impossible. Like, if
How many
we,
people do you have? Not impossible. How many do you have?
oh, the same number. So when,
One?
well, no, we have a crew of, like, one person's monitoring.
You have 8 people in your company, you said, or Shaun said, correct?
8 people is kind of in the lower mainland.
From Hope all the way down to...
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I think happened here is you don't think you really understand what the residents feel.
Yeah.
It's a failure.
No, that's fair. Yeah, yeah.
And if there was 3 companies tendering for the contract this year, the other 2 would come out and say, hey, last year was a failure. Just like if we had an election and everyone came out and said, hey, this was terrible, elect us, we're going to make things better. I think what we need, no matter what, is a solution that's not ever going to make happen what happened last year. And another thing, so that's just my statement more than anything, and hearing your response. You got to get a helicopter.
Yeah.
If you have the contract, you have to have that helicopter secured for the whole season. Because it's not fair that we have to suffer and the community has to suffer, and more importantly, the township of Langley that all come here to Fort Langley to enjoy the summer, and they can't.
Yeah.
So it's just important, I think, to really understand. And then secondly, you talk about snow melt.
Yeah.
It's a reason of snow melt. It's a reason of snow melt. Now, I'm not a scientist. I probably have a mosquito-sized brain, but I'm concerned that the cloud seeding is going on, that scientists are saying is a great idea to create more snowpack on the mountains. And there are these machines blowing at the highest mountains 24 hours a day, putting that silver, what's it called, silver dioxide into the atmosphere to help create more snow. So I'm curious your thoughts. Do you see that as a good thing for the environment to create more snowpack, or a bad thing? If you think over the last 20 years since they've been doing it, it's affecting some of what we're seeing now. So that's my question about the future, like that
Yeah, I think, seeing the snow in the snow sheds, I don't think that's changed. I'm not convinced that there is snow seeding going on, so,
It's on, you just talked about it. It's on ABC the other week. It's all, you can just Google it. It's on every popular news station.
okay, I'll look into that. I haven't seen that as a fact. I think the two things from what you've said, one is it's not necessarily the amount of snow that's in the system, it's how quickly the snow comes out. So when we get these, like this heat anomaly that we've had in the last couple of weeks, that snow has dumped out of the system. So had that snow come out kind of like it did 15, 20 years ago, we'd get this nice curve of, the freshet would be this nice predictable curve that would come out June 26th and we'd be finished by July 12th, like that was our window before. And now it's coming out because of this early heat.
But that's like saying, I wish Vancouver could play like they did in 2010 and 2011. They don't. So now we have this, so you have to deal with the situation we have.
We do.
I don't think we have a solution, and we cannot. I just wanted to let you know, so many people are so fed up with this.
Yeah.
But I didn't come here tonight. I came here to let you know, whatever happened last year was a failure, and we can't have that. So whoever's in charge of this, Metro, Township, whoever, someone needs to put pressure on the people responsible for making sure you said you have enough money, you have everything. Well, it's not working. So whatever is happening, someone who's a lot smarter than myself, or whoever, needs to figure out a solution. We need something. You can't live like this.
No, that's fair, and I understand the frustration. Just to clarify, though, down here we don't have the absent helicopter. This was more of a comment on kind of climate, how it's affecting us, was one of the questions that we had. Down here we use Western Aerial, and they have dedicated helicopters. We can almost always get them within a day of when we ask for them. And so Shaun's already let them know that we're probably going to need them midweek next week, so they're all getting lined up. We're ready to go. So that's not the issue down here. The 96 hours, the struggle is that you have hundreds of hectares of water that needs to be treated at an ideal time, and that all that water doesn't come active at exactly the same time, and there is no safe way that ground crews can treat that. One of the main reasons we use the helicopter is it's in 6-8 feet of water that's kind of in the middle of blackberries, and you can't get in there any longer. So that's one of the main reasons we use the helicopter. It's tough. Last year was, a lot of mosquitoes. Could have been viewed as a failure. It was very difficult, and
You couldn't go inside. I don't think you realize, I have a friend, he has 3 kids, and his wife works in Vancouver, he works from home.
Yeah.
And his 3 kids, you gotta think, you couldn't go outside for all of July. You couldn't go outside.
no, we definitely empathize for sure. And we do try to learn from years like that. So we've got dedicated ground teams, so hopefully we can help push that need for the helicopter back a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, you hear a lot of people that are talking about natural things. Like one thing that I've heard is lavender is a natural repellent. Is any of that stuff true, or a bunch of crap?
What, I think a lot of times when, if lavenders are working to control the mosquitoes, the mosquito problem is not really very bad. Yeah. So it's one of those, if you've just come from an area with bad mosquitoes and you're sitting in lavenders and you notice that there's none around, it could be that.
Do those personal devices work?
Well, Andy suggested the thermosol one.
It's a different one, like the electronic ones I'm talking about. They're marketing the hell out of those things right now.
Yeah, we've not. So those are a good example of the difference between the Pest Management Regulatory Association in Canada, which registers things that are safe and effective, and those are registered in the States because they're safe.
Okay.
But they're not effective. The idea with those is that they make a sound of a male mosquito, and the females are not going to like it. They're going to fly away. which is, I don't know mosquito psychology, but I'm not sure it would work.
I think we've done with our questions. Yes.
We have one more over here.
Oh, okay.
Are there things that other jurisdictions use that we're not allowed to use here that are effective?
Not in Canada. Yeah.
And then the second question is, are there things that you would like to do that you're not allowed to do to control the population?
From a larvicide perspective, it would be nice if there were a larvicide that could disperse in the water. The biggest struggle we have often, particularly in the lower mainland where there's just so much vegetation, is getting the granules to spread, to get the little nooks and crannies that is just not possible to get. So something like that. There is a pesticide, a version of the pesticide we use coming next year that has, they call it high load something or other, because it has double the active ingredient in it. The theory being that you can load up a helicopter and go twice as far when you're treating, but it could be more effective, so it'll be interesting to see. And then drones. I'm really keen to use drones.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to follow up on what this person was saying. Is it a capacity issue as far as like if you have 10 more of you that it would be more effective? Or is it like truly that you're doing everything that you can and there's really not more that can be done?
The main thing that we do on the ground is I mentioned a couple times, is timing is everything. So really our goal is to monitor what's going on, touch up little areas sort of by ground that we can, and then time the helicopter as best we can. So we monitor a lot, and the strategy that we use here and in other places is quite similar. We have similar numbers of people. Some, like Golden, we have fewer people doing the monitoring, but we lean more on the helicopter, so this is kind of a middle ground. The first question, I think 10 of me would be irritating, probably.
Question. Does Metro ever ask you guys not to do aerial treatments or like resist doing them? Like, could you request, no, this will be 10 aerial treatments, like just a random number?
No, not yet. We've not run into a scenario where we've run out of money. They haven't ever said to us, no, you got to stop. So we usually give them as much notice as we can, like we're going to need another one in the next week, so that they're prepared to tell us if they're running out, but it's not been an issue. Further up the valley, the Fraser Valley gets kind of close to the budget, so we run into that a bit, but here we have not, no. Mm-hmm. Yes?
How many aerial treatments were done last year?
I think there's 4. I think we did 4 last year. Yeah.
Did you think you needed more?
No, I mean, the aerial treatments, we time them as best we can, and based on the stuff that we're finding as things, the water changes, the hydrology changes. So mapping that, no, I don't think we don't need more. Yes?
So you said that you're waiting for licensing to use drones. Is there any way that as a community we can put pressure on the government to speed that up? Because obviously drones are cheaper, more effective, and it's going to get into the places like Frank was saying on the island that your helicopter is not going to get to any majority of people on the ground.
Yeah, well, the drones probably won't get into those tight areas like a lot of the vegetation. They're a big drone, so the drones we see in areas where there's more open areas, that'll cut out some of the helicopter. In terms of the pressure on the province, they've got a lot of really long emails from me. It's really what they're working on right now is the licensing for applicators. So as a ground applicator, there's a there's a ground mosquito control certificate and an aerial mosquito control certificate, and then the lawyers are involved to figure out where that risk lies and how to certify someone using a drone. So that should be sorted this year, and that'll kind of coincide with the Transport Canada permitting that's going to be required. It's going to be a lot, because these drones are, I mean, a load of drones over 100 kilograms and can do 90 kilometers an hour, and if something like that flies away, there's many issues. So it's sort of working around the Transport Canada challenges. So I think you will see the drones, for my hopes and dreams, the drones starting in 2024, but that licensing and permitting process from Transport Canada and the pesticide regulators in the province will, they'll meet at the end of the season so that it'll be ready to go next year. But I'm not sure that, I'm not sure that pressure, we've had some council members, like city council, ask if they can apply pressure, and generally I think they've said no. They know what they're working towards, and it's just time. Yeah.
Okay, I think we've had all our questions. I want to thank Dirk and Shaun for coming out and spending the evening with us. Really appreciate the information you gave. It is an issue here in Fort Langley, so thank you. And I do want to add, too, that the Fort Langley Community Association, we like to do this kind of town hall meeting, and we'll be looking at doing more. If you have an idea of a town hall meeting, we did one on public safety, and about a year and a half ago, it was very successful, and so and that's something that we can do again. But if you do come across something that would facilitate an idea of doing a town hall meeting, just make a comment on Facebook, email us, take a brochure, and we'll look into it. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's very much appreciated, and enjoy Fort Langley.